Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Franchise Interviews, where we're asking the franchipreneur who owns one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott, with my co-host, Don Johnson. And if you've ever dreamed about owning your own business, then you've come to the right place. We have a great show today. Listeners now have a chance of owning a piece of the energy industry. We're meeting with Jack Lee, President and CEO of 4Refule. And 4Refule is the only franchise concept of its kind that can help companies cut fuel costs and fuel consumption. 4Refule specializes in 24/7 on-site diesel refueling, fuel logistics, and automated fleet management, providing clients with such information as when fuel is delivered, which equipment or trucks it's delivered to, and most importantly, fuel usage. Clients simply can access the data online through user-friendly reports with the click of a mouse. And 4Refule just opened up a corporate office in Seattle, Washington, and that's coming up in segment 2 of Franchise Interviews. Our first segment today is being brought to you by Franchise Interviews, LLC, and Franchise Interviews gives you an up-close and behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship through our website, franchiseinterviews.com, where you can hear and read interviews as well as get inside tips from some of the most successful sources in franchising. Our weekly franchise radio show on Blog Talk Radio, where each week we can get to hear new interviews with franchisors, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and franchise attorneys, and our monthly franchise newsletter, which is a must-read for anyone looking to buy a franchise. And don't forget to check out our new podcast, Great Quotes in Franchising. And Dom, welcome back to another edition of Franchise Interviews. Happy July 4th, my friend. How you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing fine, Marty. I'm looking forward to the weekend, the long weekend. So
Same
it's
here,
always nice to have a few days off. Hopefully the weather's nice, so we'll see what happens.
It sounds like, yeah. It's hard to imagine July 4th is here, right? You usually have a pretty busy weekend, don't you?
Yeah, there's always,
especially with July 4th.
I don't like too much planned, but yeah, the summer's nice. Get out, you see friends more, and we have a couple parties this weekend, and
right.
It's good. It's all about the kids now, keeping them busy.
Oh yeah. Well,
now
it's
summers
fun.
go so quickly, so you want to get out and do stuff.
Right. Imagine like 4 years old. I mean, they must look forward to it now, right? I mean, I remember when they were 1 or 2 years old. I mean, I guess
right.
It didn't have much meaning, but at 4 years old, that must be a magic age to watch these fireworks.
Right. Yeah. Well, my little son, because they're loud and big, and
right.
little kids get scared. So my little son Ryan's, was reminding my wife and I to make sure we stay in the car and watch the fireworks.
Isn't that great?
He's nice and safe in the car. Yeah.
Oh, that's something. Oh, geez. Well, last week, Don, we met with Chief Operating Officer Sam Herskowitz of the franchise Sterling Optical. And Sterling Optical opened up its first store in the financial district in 1914, which I guess making them one of the oldest franchises we've had on the show up to this point.
Right.
Thought it was a very interesting show. You and I were both familiar with Sterling Optical. What were your thoughts on last week's show?
Yeah, I'm impressed that they basically handle everything in-house, from having an in-house eye doctor to doing the exams, the contact lenses, a complete, eyeglass, as far as manufacturing it, sunglasses,
right.
Like anything having to do, with the eye, they can handle right in their stores. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is incredible. You and I were talking earlier, Don, I always remember Sterling Optical, going into their stores, like, let's say, I've been wearing glasses since I'm 16 years old, so I remember the older stores, and some of them were massive. It took up a lot of space. They were real big, and Sam was mentioning how the stores are a lot smaller today, and that's really attributed to technology. He was mentioning
right.
how the equipment is it's much smaller today than it was 10, 20 years ago, and it's also easier to use. Guys like you and I
right.
probably figure it out, and how to use it. So it's just amazing the impact that technology has on a lot of these franchises. So thought it was a great show. I'd like to definitely have them back in the near future.
Yeah, and he mentioned he doesn't necessarily think 100% that they're recession-proof, or any business is, but I tend to think
right.
His type of industry is close to being recession-proof, because, and I think you said it, you're not going to cut corners when it comes to your eye and health and so forth. So
you can't.
If you need
right.
something, you're going to go get it, or
I
get an
agree.
exam.
He added marketing into that. He spoke about the difference between a need and a want. He said kind of like, I guess during, when times are bad, people will always get glasses, but, when times are good, the economy's good, I guess that's where they kind of do a lot of upselling, and get a higher quality pair of glasses and sell
right.
sunglasses and things like that. They're expensive eyeglasses. You know, I don't know when the last time you were at the eye doctor. I just found out last week that you wear glasses. Because I never see you wear them. But you know, I mean, they're pretty expensive. You know, I mean, it adds up. I mean, the average ticket sale is it's up there. You know, so.
And I think a lot of these eye care places, like Sterling Optical, I guess with you know, the eyeglass, you know, fashion can make a change. So a lot of times people want to stay on the trend, and maybe they don't need the you know, their eye has not changed their vision, but they might want to get a new pair of glasses because it just looks nicer, the fashion behind it. So that's what helps that industry.
Yeah, I try to keep up to date on the glasses too. You know, I think Sam was mentioning that the glasses today are actually bigger. You know, where you know, 5-6 years ago, the trend that was taking place was that eyeglasses were, you know, a lot smaller. So I remember the eyeglasses my dad wore back, you know, when I was a little kid. You know, those thick black glasses that everyone seems to wear. You know.
Yeah, that won't come back. I don't think.
I don't think so. I don't think that one's coming back. But you're right, though. It's the trends do change, you know, and that's good for their business. So just thought it was a great show. You know.
Right, definitely.
I'd like to have them back in the future. So, and speaking of recession-proof, what do we have going on today and over the next couple months?
Yeah, Marty. Today we're having Jack Lee, CEO of 4Refule franchise, and yeah, like you just mentioned, it'd be interesting speaking to Jack, his input on this, because I would tend to think that, you know, it's definitely a recession-proof. Yeah,
right. I would agree.
They're a revolutionary fuel management technology enables small, medium businesses to reduce fueling costs and track their greenhouse gas emissions online. They do a lot of interesting things, and like we've talked about previous shows, when we're promoting this show, we really don't know much about this franchise. It should be interesting.
Right.
They help.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say I was wowed, Don. You know, when I was on their website, I guess, you know, you were on their website as well, you know, kind of going over all the different things that they do, and I said, wow, what a great concept. You know, it makes so much sense. You know, it's
Yeah, I mean, they simply have help companies to effectively manage their fuel, reduce costs, and increase productivity. So we'll see what happens with that. Next week, Marty, July 10th, meeting with James Franks of Baskin-Robbins. He's the National Director of Franchising. And then the following week, we're meeting with Tom Scarda, real franchise pro, has been in the industry for many years. And then in early August, we're meeting with Mr. Kelly Grace of 1-800-RADIATOR. So
that's great. So we got a lot of things happening over the next couple months. We're going to be pretty busy.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's great. Well, I guess you heard the news, Don, up to this point, that Starbucks plans to close 600 stores across the United States. There's 12,000 employees affected. The company hopes to absorb some. This is a quick article from the Seattle Post-Intelligencer by Andrea James. And it says, hit hard by a slowing economy, Starbucks Corporation is closing 600 stores, or 8.5% of its U.S. company-operated portfolio, signaling an end to Seattle company's U.S. boom, at least for now. From 1982, when the company had just 4 stores, until 2 years ago when Starbucks announced plans to triple its number of stores. I remember when they announced that. It seemed as Starbucks' demand knew no bounds. Here's a quote. It says, "We believe we've improved the profit potential of the U.S. stores portfolio," he told analysts on a conference call. I guess this is from Chief Financial Officer Pete Buckian. It says, "You should view today's decision as a very hard one for us to make, but one where we did look very hard at the store's economics. We ended up taking a bigger action that you might have expected going on." I think what they're looking more now is towards profitability. You know, and sometimes what happens is, you know, we've heard this with franchises before, Don, you know, and Starbucks, by the way, is not a franchise, but, you know, getting the danger of sometimes getting too big too fast, you know, and we've had a lot of franchises on the show that said, you know what, we don't want to get too big too fast and kind of like lose control of our situation. But, you know, it does make you ask the question, you know, would Starbucks have been better off franchising their coffee shops? You know, do franchisees have a bigger stake than employees do in a company? You know what I mean? So I think that's something that maybe we could even, you know, and the interesting thing about Blog Talk Radio is we can set up a blog on this particular topic. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that, or?
Yeah. Well, first, I mean, I was pretty surprised to see that because they've just been growing so quickly. You see them all over the place. They're in bookstores and here and there, and I think a lot of those closings are a lot of their newer stores that just opened in the last couple of years. And you start thinking, hey, is it mostly the economy that's causing that, or is it just competition? You know, it's probably a combination. But yeah, I mean that's an interesting question. Say if they, because there's a lot of big companies that have a certain amount of corporate stores and franchise units, and
right.
I'm sure they've tossed that around for years whether to start franchising. But it would be interesting if all those, say, the last couple of years were all franchise units, whether they'd have to close that many.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. I just think franchisees a lot of times, they really have a bigger stake in the company, where as opposed to if you're, and you've been an employee to companies, you know what I mean, and now you own your own business. What's more important to you, your own business or work for somebody else, So
I wonder what the percentage of that franchise owner, say, they owned it, how much just not advertising, but getting out in the community to spur on
That's what
sales.
I think. I just think you're hungrier for success when you're a franchisee, So I just thought it would be, an interesting topic to discuss. So I think what we'll do is, and we've never really done this, is set up a blog on this particular topic. It wasn't, that long ago. I have another article here. I don't know if you remember when this happened. It says Starbucks closes thousands of coffee shops for training. This was back in February. It says Starbucks coffee lovers were deprived of their caffeine fix for an agonizing 3 hours on Tuesday as the firm closed 7,100 shops across America to train staff to brew a perfect cup of joe. So you kind of say, what was going on there? And when they did that, Dunkin' Donuts was actually offering specials, I guess, to kind of steal Starbucks customers, because if you can't get your Starbucks, where are you going to go? You're probably going to go to Dunkin' Donuts. But, what made them do that?
What an unusual move, because you lose such big-time sales.
I think it's just a bad move in general, right? I mean, it just seems like such a bad move because, you can the potential of losing your customer to somebody else, people are always going to get their coffee. It's an addiction.
Well, I was just going to ask you about that. During these times, is it more a luxury-type purchase, or I mean, I'm not a coffee drinker, but people usually have to have their coffee. If they like it, they're willing to pay a little bit. But during these times, do people cut back and say, well, maybe I don't have to get Starbucks? That's the other interesting side.
Another great question, yeah. I mean, is Starbucks a luxury, or could you get, last year, or was it, I think it was last year, McDonald's introduced their coffee, and they did a taste test, and McDonald's coffee actually came out ahead of Starbucks. So you pay $1 for a cup of McDonald's coffee, which, by the way, is very good. Versus $3 for Starbucks, what would you do? So, yeah, I mean, a lot of things were going on with Starbucks, I guess, over the last couple of years, but made some interesting and maybe possibly bad moves, But I've always thought, we get people all the time asking us, should Starbucks franchise their concept, or I want to buy a Starbucks franchise. What do I have to do? Well, you know what? They're not a franchise. You can't buy one. So I just thought that was interesting. I was kind of a little surprised to hear that announcement this week as well, too.
Interesting. We'll have to keep an eye on it. You
we will.
McDonald's. Here's something in the Wall Street Journal by Janet Adamy, July 1st. McDonald's creates Asian-inspired versions of food as part of Olympic splits. And this, this is right around the corner of the Olympics. I always get into that a little bit. It says McDonald's is arming restaurant workers at the Beijing Olympics with video cameras and creating Asian-inspired versions of its food around the world as part of a media blitz for the games. In Latin America, McDonald's restaurants have created a special menu that includes a Beijing burger with chop suey and breaded sticks of rice to promote the games. In Denmark, the company created a 310-calorie chicken Olympic burger with the help of dietitians from the Danish Olympic team. The fast food chain says the games demonstrate its growing commitment to digital advertising. In Japan, for instance, almost all of McDonald's marketing around the Olympics will take place through consumers' mobile phones.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing that there's a whole new industry. They call it M-commerce, marketing to people's cell phones, because you always have your cell phone on you.
Right, exactly. But while the company has recently boosted its digital advertising significantly, the fast food chain is hardly a trendsetter when it comes to digital spending. It now devotes between 8 to 10% of its marketing spending to digital, up from 2% 4 years ago. Despite the rapidly growing amount of time that most people spend online, most major marketers still only spend in the neighborhood of 10% on digital, according to ad executives. The non-traditional aspects of its Beijing Olympics, Marty, campaign include a cryptic online game called The Lost Ring, where players piece together clues to uncover a secret tied to the games. McDonald's started that in March, and Mary Dillon, the company's global chief marketing officer, said there are 1.8 million people playing it.
Wow.
China, the company has also created a reality television program with a government-run channel where children have competed for a chance to go to the games. McDonald's has pledged in its advertising to kids, a key demographic, of course, to promote only its healthier fare, such as apple dippers and milk, rather than French fries and shakes. McDonald's used the last Olympics in Torino, Italy, to launch a push toward making its products seem healthier. So they're latching on to the Olympic Games. And, staying in the sports theme, Marty, here's an article from Franchise Times Magazine. Pole position, NASCAR sponsors take checkered flag. Franchisors say tying their fortunes to popular spectator sports, such as NASCAR, spurs sales and even better customer loyalty. It's an article by Matt Bolch. It says billboards speeding by at nearly 200 miles per hour might not sound like a wise advertising move, but then again, NASCAR is no ordinary sport. I'm not a big car fan, but I watch NASCAR once in a while. It's interesting.
Oh, do you really?
It's come on the country so big, and I see now it's on some of the major channels. And
right, it is. Yeah, Ganny. I'm always amazed at how popular it is, Don. Out here in Pennsylvania, I think it's a lot more popular than out in New Jersey. It seems like, but
yeah, well, they just had the Pocono 500, I guess, not too long ago.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah, I think it was like just within a month or so ago. The article says, Marty, sponsorship opportunities usually don't extend to a sport's players and their equipment, but NASCAR teams long ago embraced their sponsors. Cars and trucks that race in the series sell advertising space on the hood, side panels, rear deck, bumper, inside the car, and all over the driver's uniforms. I mean, you look at NASCAR, there's ads all over the place.
It's incredible, yeah.
It says name a spot on a car or a driver uniform, and there's probably an advertising opportunity there. When a driver has success on the track, the driver, car number, sponsor, and team owner become synonymous among the sport's estimated 75 million fans, 40% of whom are women. Interesting.
Really? That is interesting. Wow, I never would have guessed.
And it says here, Dallas-based Interstate Batteries has been a sponsorship relationship with Joe Gibbs Racing since before the legendary coach of the NFL's Washington Redskins formed his Sprint Cup race team in the early 90s. Charlie Brim, manager of advertising and sponsorships for the privately held company, says Interstate Batteries' relationship with the race team is the longest-running sponsorship in NASCAR.
Wow, that's
interesting.
That is very interesting.
A National Consumer Survey conducted after Interstate ran a humorous 30-second TV spot between early December and the end of February showed a 5-point spike to 65% in awareness of the company's products among adult battery purchasers. We think that translates to sales, Brim says. If people have heard of the brand, they're more likely to accept a recommendation for our products. And also, Marty, Great Clips, Inc. has sponsored a car in the series since 2001. It currently has its logo on the number 38 Braun racing car driven by Jason Leffler, who in early May was in the top 10 in points.
Wow.
From a franchisee perspective, the brand is getting media exposure and being associated with other top brands, says Ann Latendress, Director of Brand Communication for the Minneapolis-based Salon franchise. It also is a nice, long sport, and when your driver's doing well, you get lots of exposure.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's pretty interesting.
Most costs a pretty penny, too, Don. We should find out about sponsoring.
Right.
With these cars,
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Well, it says here a primary sponsor of a car or truck in NASCAR's top 3 series can spend from $1 million to $25 million or more.
That's unbelievable, isn't it?
It's a pretty big stretch there, but yeah, it's expensive, but I mean, it's such a popular sport now. 75 million fans around the country.
Absolutely. That's incredible.
Also out of Wall Street Journal, Marty, by Justin Lahart, businesses scramble to offset rising cost of transportation, kind of staying in the theme of our guest today.
Right.
It says every day planes filled with fresh flowers from Ecuador and Colombia land at Miami International Airport, where the flowers are transferred to refrigerated trucks cooled to 34 to 36 degrees. 2-person teams of drivers race through the U.S., stopping only to drop off flowers at wholesalers. The operation, designed to get flowers from the South American highlands to American flower shops as quickly as possible, was a better business before fuel costs surged. Last year this time, we were paying about $19 a box to bring flowers to Miami, says Victor Giorgini, president of Miami-based Equiflor Corp., which imports more than 100 million roses a year. Right now we're paying in the neighborhood of $28. Went from 19
what
to
a
28.
big difference. My God.
Says it hurt us a lot. It's eroding profits. Since the mid-'80s, U.S. businesses that rely on quick delivery for time-sensitive products, from sushi restaurants to flower shops to manufacturers that use just-in-time delivery strategies, have benefited from inexpensive transportation costs. Now, with oil closing at a record $140 a barrel on Friday, those businesses are being hit hard.
Oh, yeah.
And this was just dated June 30th, so the price is probably in that range. Over time, the increasing expense of moving goods could lead to a broad restructuring in the way America conducts commerce. But for now, businesses pinched by lower profits are just looking for ways to survive, from raising prices to forming alliances with local producers. The entire economy is a bit like someone who bought a big sport utility vehicle at the beginning of last year,
Okay.
When gasoline cost around $2.25 a gallon,
right.
Says Morgan Stanley economist Richard Berner. Now the driver is stuck with a gas guzzler he can't afford to unload yet.
Oh God.
Just incredible. My wife and I fill up our SUV. I just put the receipt in my pocket and move on. I
don't even look at it. It's painful at the pump, you know.
Just as the SUV owner will eventually switch to another car, U.S. businesses will find ways to cut their transportation bill, but it will take time. Indeed, low transportation costs are a big part of what has made globalization possible. We fly across the Pacific Ocean with all these components, says Mr. Berner. It still may be possible, or I'm sorry, it may be profitable to do that, but the equation has changed. So we'll have to hear from what Jack has to say about that today.
Oh, absolutely. That's incredible. I mean, with the again, Jack could speak better than I could about this, but I know with their technology, I think they could even tell how long a car remains idle. You know, I guess like at a stoplight on. So it's
right.
amazing, the technology. You know, so just a great article.
And when companies' profits get squeezed, it's just about all the time passed on to the consumer.
Well, do you guys have a delivery service? Like, do you guys a lot of times we'll order Chinese food or we'll order pizza, and they deliver it right to the house. I mean, do you guys do that? Or do you typically go to the restaurant to pick it up?
I'd say about 50% of the time we get delivery. And, I didn't really think about it. I think the last time we had pizza delivered, I think there was a little additional cost in there.
There was, okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting, yeah. I didn't pay much attention to it, but next time I order Chinese food, I'm going to have to just go up,
carefully scour the total bill,
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's something, Marty. International Franchise Association, through Franchising World magazine in their May edition, says franchise relations, different ideas, great solutions. There are many different ways to measure success in franchising, but clearly franchisee satisfaction is at the top of the list. This is by Eric Stites. He writes a lot of nice articles for them. It says, in the passionate words of the late Bill Rosenberg, founder of both Dunkin' Donuts and co-founder of the International Franchise Association, he says you can't have a successful franchisor without successful franchisees, and you can't have successful franchisees without a successful franchisor.
True.
I thought I'd definitely stutter on that.
You got it, though. It sounded good.
And Eric says, I've never had the opportunity to meet Bill in person, but I believe that his ideas and vision for what franchising should be are very much alive in some of today's franchise leaders. He says, I've had the opportunity to work with some of the very best in the business, learning from their years of experience with successful franchisee-franchisor relations. Here are just a few of the ideas that could have a major impact on your franchise relations and the overall success of your business. One, he says, painting a picture. It goes far beyond just simply having a strong vision of your company. You need to communicate your vision to your staff, your franchisees, and your franchisee candidates repeatedly. Your vision needs to be so vivid and clear that everyone can see it, feel it, and believe it. It's what Brian Scudamore, founder and CEO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK and IFA's Entrepreneur of the Year, calls painting a picture. Mm-hmm. For example, his 2012 vision for 1-800-GOT-JUNK is driving the company toward his goal of $1 billion in sales, operating in 10 countries, and having a globally admired brand. And he says, admired not for what we've built, but how we've built it. It is those crystal clear, concrete goals painted with exacting detail that keep his home office staff and hundreds of franchisees focused on where the company's going and how it's going to get there. So that's interesting. Two, it says keeping commitments. It sounds so simple and obvious that it's almost silly to mention, but occasionally we all drop the ball. No matter how hard we try to be perfect, something always slips through the cracks. That is why Catherine Monson's Keeping Commitments worksheet is such a brilliantly simple idea. She's an IFA board member and serves on the association's Franchise Relations Committee, heads up the franchise services, PIP printing and marketing services, and knows about keeping commitments with her franchisees. Each year, she says, Marty, during the PIP annual convention, Monson and her staff use a simple pen and paper worksheet, keep track of every commitment made to a franchisee. After the convention, the worksheet is circulated among the corporate staff, and every commitment is completed and followed up on. And, yeah, I mean, it is something simple, but Yeah, you could end up making a lot of promises. I know in my business I hate saying I'm going to do something, and, you want to make sure you follow up on it.
Right, yeah, it's just one of the things I tell my marketing students, never, over-promise and under-deliver. It's just because customers will always hold you to that,
Yeah, you have to, you have to have that. I mean, the details is what usually
Right.
is the difference between a good and bad company.
Sure, absolutely.
Next point here, Marty says, in business together. Sandler Training President Bruce Seidman credits his company's Together We're Stronger culture with helping it maintain very strong relations with their franchise owners. Part of the We're in Business Together legacy of founder David Sandler, the lifelong learning never stops for franchisees and corporate staff. While many franchise systems struggle to get franchisees to attend their annual conference, Sandler hosts 3 national conventions each year with 95% attendance. It doesn't stop there. With a highly active franchisee advisory council and regular regional meetings and on-call coaching staff of retired franchisees in coaching videos online or in MP3 format, Sandler Training franchisees have lots of resources at their disposal. On top of that, each franchisee has his own accountability coach, another franchisee that they talk with regularly to make sure they're hitting their goals. And he says here, because we're a training company, we're good at training. We do what we say and follow through with our franchisees. It's just basics, but so true, and we deliver, he says.
That's good, yeah. It's interesting.
Something else moving on in the article, Marty. Number 4, communication flows both ways. Good communication is a challenge with just about every organization, franchise or non-franchise. The art of being a great communicator starts with being a great listener, actually hearing the other person's word, and more importantly, the meaning behind those words. Paul Hogan, founder and CEO of Home Instead Senior Care, knows a lot about art of listening. We do a lot of listening, he says. We talk to and survey our franchisees more than any company I know. We're seeking to grow the whole organization, not just one aspect of it. We don't leave any stakeholders out. For Hogan, the listening has paid off. Home Instead franchisee satisfaction performance ranks among the highest in the industry. Also, Marty, engage early and often. Having franchisees involved in every level of a franchise organization is critical to the overall success of any franchise system. The franchisees are interacting with customers every day, and it's important to have a feedback loop to the corporate team. While many companies set up a franchisee advisory council specifically for this purpose, some go an alternative route that can work just as well. Joe Lindemeyer, president of TSS Photography, said, without listening to franchisees and having them engaged in the vision and the direction of the company, you're really in a glass house. You don't know what you're truly missing. There are opportunities out there, and you can shorten the learning curve if you engage with the franchisees earlier. We've talked a lot about this going back the last couple of years. Some franchisors like to get a lot of franchisee feedback. I think most of them will do it.
Right.
Some
more than others, right. Yeah,
right.
That's what we've experienced.
Franchising, it's all about following the system, but I guess like any company, if eventually over time, because times can change.
Right.
So our guest on a few weeks ago talked about changes as part of life and part of what you're just going to have to do in any franchise system.
And that's how a lot of great ideas, came into our lives, Don. You and I've mentioned, was it the filet of fish?
Right.
Just stories like that. Some of the best ideas come from the franchisees because, they're on the front line, so they kind of hear, what the customer wants too. So I think that's great.
Right. And the article goes on, talks about leadership summits.
Okay.
About getting the franchisees together. For example, it says, bringing your top-performing franchisees together for a few days of brainstorming and vision sharing not only builds strong bonds, but also produces amazing results. Once a year, we fly in 10 to 15 of their top franchise owners for a 3-day vision sharing summit, says Liam Crow, president and CEO of Barkbusters USA. Barkbusters leadership summits are not just another business gathering, long on dreaming and short on actionable items. They are results-focused power gatherings of the best and the brightest in the system. I'm hoping they're allowing a little bit of play and having a good time. Sounds very serious.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, today, Don, we have a great show. We're meeting with Jack Lee, president and CEO of 4Refule. And 4Refule is the only franchise concept of its kind that can help companies cut fuel costs and also, as we were saying earlier, fuel consumption. 4Refule specializes in 24/7 on-site diesel refueling, fuel logistics, and automated fleet management, providing clients with such information as when fuel is delivered, which equipment or trucks it's delivered to, and most importantly, fuel usage. It's just amazing technology. Good morning, Jack. Welcome to the show.
Good morning.
How you doing today, Jack?
Pretty well, thanks. Yourself?
Good. Jack, joining us is my co-host, Don Johnson, and I know, Don, you wanted to say good morning to Jack.
Yeah, Jack, how you doing? We appreciate you coming on the show. Marty and I have been looking forward to you coming on the show. just because of the type of franchise you have. It's so in line with what's going on with today's economy. And I don't know if you listened to the first segment of the show. We talked a little bit about companies and their rising energy and fuel costs. And, it's great timing to have you on our show.
Sure is.
Yes, I was listening. Thank you.
Good.
Jack, we always like to start off, where are you calling from today?
Vancouver, Canada.
Oh, great, which is probably nice up there this time of year, isn't it?
It's been beautiful the last few weeks anyways.
That's fantastic. Jack, what were you doing before joining 4Refule? I think it sounds like you started off in Australia.
Yeah, actually, I'm a Canadian citizen, and I went down for a year working holiday in 1972, one-way boat ticket, and I spent about 24 years in the horticultural business. So we were involved in tree farming and nursery and landscaping, golf courses, and significant type commercial landscaping.
That's great.
And how did 4Refule come about? Jack, did you know someone at the company?
Well, when I was in Australia and I was in the landscape business, I sort of had a yen to come back to North America, and my father was ill, and I was just looking for an opportunity. So I came across a concept called mini tankers, and that was, if you like, the predecessor to what we now today call 4Refule, and I came across the concept and thought, hey, if I'm going to go back to Canada, and of course I like to be active, and I'm a bit of an entrepreneurial person, I thought, I'll have a look at this. So I did. I looked at it in Australia and New Zealand, and about 13 years ago, came back, did a feasibility, and 3 months later moved back to Canada.
That's fantastic.
And as far as the Refuel company, Jack, maybe talk about how the company started and a little bit of the history.
In Canada or in the concept in Australia?
No, I'd say here in Canada and the U.S. how things are going. Yeah,
well, I bought the master license for Canada in 1995. Yeah. So we started in the Vancouver area here, and then we actually took us 5 years to license and franchise across Canada. So we're right from the East Coast, far East Coast, Atlantic Canada, right to Vancouver Island here in the West, and we're in all the major cities in Canada.
I didn't realize it. So you're saying the company actually started in Australia?
That is correct. It was under the brand called Mini Tankers, on-site diesel refueling.
All right.
And the concept, going back to the history, the concept, two guys were literally sitting around in an airport, and their flight was late, and they were waiting, and they saw these vehicles going out and filling up equipment and planes on the tarmac,
right.
And they figured, well, if this works on the airports, it would probably work in construction.
Right.
And basically, that's how the concept evolved. That was about 1984, I believe.
It's always great stories, isn't it, Don? Like how you hear how a lot of the founders came up with the concept. Is just sometimes just timing.
Right. Just looking for ways to do something better. But that's interesting. Just
absolutely.
Like we've talked about, we always love those type of stories. And it's something simple like that can become just a huge multi-billion-dollar company down the line. Jack, can you describe for us the 4Refule franchise system?
Yeah, so what we do is we're now franchising internationally and in the U.S. as well. So our system has varied a little bit from the original mini tanker concept, where one truck, one tanker unit was a franchise. We've varied that a bit because what we discovered is one truck, one franchise. A person basically bought themselves a job. And what we're looking for is business people who wanted to build a future, build some income and some wealth. So we varied the model, and what we're franchising internationally is like a multi-unit franchise, where every operating unit, every truck, every tanker truck is actually like a franchise, like a small store. But the franchisee will have a minimum of 10 operating units. So, which case he could build himself a substantial business with a reasonable amount of investment.
And the 4Refule franchisee, who are the type of customers he's going after? Is there a pretty broad spectrum of?
Yeah, we're primarily business to business. So if you think of any of your major brand names in North America, globally, like we've been doing Coca-Cola across Canada for probably 9 years. So, and FedEx and Purolator, Big Brown. So. Right. Rail companies. So anybody that uses distillate or diesel fuel, marine with boats, fishing boats, tugboats. We do we do a lot of train business, filling locomotives. So anything that uses distillate, and typically business-to-business customers, that's who our target market is.
It's a pretty big market too, Jack. I mean, I guess it's not just big companies that we're talking about. I mean, I guess it's small to medium-sized companies as well. Then, which
absolutely. We categorize our customers A, B, C. Our C customers are owner-operators, a guy who might have a bobcat and a backhoe, a couple of little small pieces of equipment. Well, we give them the same services we do Coca-Cola. Customers are customers. There's no better, no worse.
And just so our listeners are clear, that exact service. I mean, it's really overall fuel management. Like, maybe discuss what the franchisee actually does for these big clients or the small, local business owner.
Yeah, well, what we've ascertained, and especially nowadays with the rising fuel costs. I mean, people say, well, what can you do, Jack? What can you do about my fuel costs? Well, I say, unfortunately, I'm not Exxon, and I can't determine what your fuel costs are.
Right.
The only thing I can do is help you to reduce your fuel costs. And there's a number of ways we can do that. And one is on-site refueling is a significant fuel reduction cost. And what the logic behind that is, any of our customers, typically previous to like our type of service, would have to go pick up their fuel themselves. So they might have 100 operating trucks. They would have to send their operators to a truck stop or a service station, wherever there was diesel fuel, and they might spend 15, 20 minutes a day picking up fuel to burn fuel. So we would say to people, is in essence, we don't really sell fuel. We give you back time. We sell time. So for every 100 trucks you have, we're giving you back 15, 20 minutes a day. So you got a choice. You can either reduce your overtime, and or you can take that 20 minutes and more importantly, you can turn that into productivity, which I believe is the case at Coca-Cola. I believe that they give their drivers the same shift, but they just deliver 5 or 6 more cases of Coke, which is revenue. So in the end, that really reduces your overall operating cost, which is your fuel cost.
Right, because time is money. That's interesting. It's just, you would have thought that some of these big oil companies or the local gas station owner who owns several companies that would have set up a service to bring fuel to companies. But I guess that never really came about. That's what you're taking now. That's why your company's being successful now.
Well, it's partly true. I mean, there are a number in Canada and in the United States. There are a number of people, what they call the terminology in the United States is wet hosing. Not a lot of people do this wet hosing service,
right.
But it seems to be ancillary to maybe their truck stop or their car lock or their service station.
Yeah.
We don't own or operate those type of facilities. We are dedicated to the on-type service, and our service, and people say, well, why haven't a lot of other people done this before? And I guess my most simple question is, it's hard. I mean, there's a lot of nighttime work because guess what? The fleets of trucks are parked at night.
True.
But the upside of that is our store. If you take the concept of our operating unit is a typical store, call it a Subway, Pizza Hut, whatever you want to liken it to. We can actually work that 24/7 because we can deliver to people in the night, we can deliver to people in the daytime, so we can get a bigger return on our operating asset.
And as far as your service of fuel management, with some of these big companies, there must be some slip through the cracks, so to speak, of them paying more than what they should. So I guess you really tie in that efficiency and save companies just a lot of money and just analyzing their fuel and energy reports.
Absolutely. With every customer, we start off what we call a true cost of fuel. And a true cost of fuel is just basically an electronic spreadsheet that's into our sales guys' mobile computers. Sit down with the customer. It's a series of questions. I might ask the customer, how many trucks do you have? What do you pay what's your labor cost? What's your on costs with that? One of the questions is, how much do you think you lose to slippage? And slippage means is the fuel that you think you're buying, how much of it isn't going into your tank. Right. And that's becoming more and more serious today because fuel is becoming like a black market commodity. And I think I recall reading, I don't know if it was the New York Times or whatever, but America lost something like $8 billion in fuel theft last year. So that's not my statistic. That was just in a recent publication here a couple of weeks ago. So anyways, back to the true cost of fuel. When we answer the customer answers all his own questions, we just put a calculate button, and that will calculate his time to go drive to the truck stop, his labor costs, all these sorts of things, and it calculates the number of cents extra that he's paying over and above the price per gallon that he's paying at the pump. So we say your true cost of fuel is not only what the product costs wherever you get it, it's all your other on costs. So 99 times out of 100, we can go and we can say those extra on costs, we can actually deliver the fuel direct into your operating equipment and still save you money. So hand you back that time for more productivity. So that's really what our offering is.
That's fantastic. And I bet the investors and the shareholders and all these other people, you know, they get involved once a company starts using your service, Jack, I guess are very happy because profitability certainly goes up, that's for sure.
Well, it does. And okay, once we establish a relationship with a customer, I think the question before was, you know, with technology, where we help the customers to track this, we call it now fuel as an operating asset. It's no longer just fuel. It's an asset in your company, and you can either get a return or, conversely, not get a return on it. So once a person becomes our customer, we have a fuel tracking service. So every time we fill up a piece of equipment, and if you can imagine Coca-Cola, literally hundreds of trucks, every time we fill one of their trucks at night at one of 26 locations in Canada, that information goes from an onboard computer down to our server in Langley down to Atlanta, where head office for Coke is.
Right.
So they're able to see transparently what piece of equipment, what truck got filled, when, what time of day. We take a GPS shot so they know exactly how much fuel. We then put that into a data warehouse. We call that fuel management online. So they can see their whole fueling history of every individual piece of equipment over a 4-year period. They can export it back into their systems in XXL, PDF, Excel, whatever. So we not only save the people time at their operation level, we can also save them time at their administration level because we sort of merge and integrate with their back-end systems.
It's amazing.
So I know, Jack, all of us, yourself, I'm sure you're not happy with the rise in the gas prices, but you must be smiling just thinking this is just really a kind of a home run for your company, so to speak.
Well, Don, you're right. I mean, I think one of your chaps mentioned about sort of the right timing of things.
Right.
The price of the rising price of fuel, as much as it's disdainful when I pick it up personally,
right,
is actually good for our business because people are now more cognizant about managing their fuel.
Right.
And we have lots of documented cases where people can save 10 to 15% on their fuel costs by using a lot of the on-site refueling, the information that we can give them through our service that they can better their efficiencies. So you get like 10% on a 100,000 or 50,000 gallon account a month. That comes up at a lot of money at 3 to 4 cents a gallon.
I mean,
$3 to $4 a gallon.
Right,
$3 to $4 a gallon, sorry.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, there's just thousands of trucking companies nationwide. It's just, so many potential clients out there. I mean, trucking companies have folded in years past because maybe they weren't managing their fuel costs.
Mm-hmm. And they are today. I mean, there are people, the ones that haven't put fuel charges on are probably already gone or going.
Right.
And, of course, we, the consumers, end up bearing the brunt in the end. But, unfortunately, we can't do anything about that, about the fuel cost, but we can do something about the way we handle it. And I think one of you mentioned too earlier that we have our fuel management online, but we're able to, at the time of refueling, is able to extract engine information. So the terminology is called telematics, and it's all electronic, so it's automatic. The operator doesn't have to do anything. He just positively ID, scans the vehicle. The information is sucked into our onboard computer, and then it's made available to the customer online, so he can see which of his vehicles are idling too much, over-revving, speeding, when his next service is due, and everything else. Because these things that fleet managers can do to manage their fleet can also significantly reduce their operating costs.
It's interesting. I mean, you're doing a great job of explaining all this, Jack. And what is it, 7:30 in the morning your time where you are?
Oh, yeah, I've been up for minutes.
There you go.
No, it's summertime, I get up early.
What do you look for in your franchisees, Jack? Like, what kind of experience should they have? Or should they have prior experience in this industry, or can someone like Don and I get into it?
Not necessarily in the industry, but we would suggest that a person has been involved in business to business.
Okay.
Because what I like about our concept and why I was attracted to it is I can go out and get my customers.
Right.
So we have active sales guys, and you might have figured out I like sales myself, but we can actively go and identify who our customers are. We can do data searches, and we can look at an area, and we know who our customers are, and we can go do our pitch to them, and we can grow our business literally as fast as we want to. So I like that personally better than more of a passive business where people have to come to me.
Right, exactly.
So the type of people we want are, obviously, they're self-starters. I think this is probably sort of cliche-ish, because I've been in the franchise industry for, going on my 14th year.
Right.
But, somebody who can manage people, because a 10 operating unit franchise is probably going to employ in the order of 30 people. So you have to be able to talk to, motivate, pass the vision on. I was listening to your show earlier on where you can instill the vision and the passion into all of your people for the success of the business. That's critical.
Yeah. It's interesting because this is an industry where the barriers to entry, Jack, were always very high in the past. So it's amazing that aspiring entrepreneurs can now get into this type of industry.
Yeah, well, we actually did a little DVD about to that effect. Typically, what had happened up until the last, probably in the U.S. about 15 years ago, in Canada it's just evolving now, is the major oil companies owned the total from if you like cradle to grave with fuel. They discovered it, they drilled it, they refined it, and they delivered it to the end user. Now your Exxons, your BPs, your Shells have exited the distribution segment. So this is where our opportunity is, because people, regardless who manufactures it, people still have to get their product. So they've left this significant gap in the marketplace, and we just see it as a huge opportunity.
Yeah. Jack, what has been the most interesting thing that's happened to you since joining 4Refule? Anything?
Boy, that's like every day. Actually, the most probably the most interesting thing that's happened, and we just sort of touched on it, is in the last year. I mean, the price of fuel has doubled in the last year. I mean, that is huge. I mean, there will be less people flying, there will be less people driving. Our price of products are going up at the store, and that is all just terrible news for we consumers. But the most really exciting thing is this whole opportunity this offering we had, which was excellent, just becomes now astounding now, if for those who want to take advantage of it. So, answer your question, the most exciting thing is how the market has developed, which was really a negative, which is so positive for us.
Right, absolutely. Did you want to talk about the training, Jack, for your new franchisees, how that works?
Yeah, we have two operational centers, one out in the Vancouver area here. We're in a smaller suburb called Langley, so not to be confused with Langley, DC, of course. And that's usually say Vancouver because nobody knows where Langley is. So we have our finance, admin, and IT center here, and we've got the three offices in an office block. Then we have a sales and operations office in Toronto, Ontario. So the Franchise Canada does a full week of on in-house training at finance, admin, and IT, and then a full weeks of sales and operation in Toronto. And that's, if you like, in-class training. And then once they get back to their jurisdiction, we have a rollout team that assists them in not only maybe selection of staff, but in some extra training and to get them started, to get them hopefully independent as soon as possible.
How does the marketing process start to try to get some customers? I guess there's a lot of support from the franchisor or the home office, but what do usually a franchisee do to, once training is done, they're opening their doors, how do they go about initially trying to get some business?
Well, the first thing that they will do is they'll use our CRM, our customer relationships module on our computer, so they can go in and see all of our customer base that we have in Canada, and we also have a corporate store in Seattle, which we established about 10 months ago. So they can go and see who all of our customers are. They can overlay that to see who is in their area. Before we have a franchised area, how we select a franchised area, we can use like a Dun & Bradstreet, get the SIC codes, standard industrial codes. I don't know if you're familiar with that term. So we can overlay. We know what our customer base looks like because we've been doing it for 14 years. So we can take that Dun & Bradstreet list, we can overlay that with like an info map thing, and we can actually, it highlights the type of people, or the people, with their phone numbers, their addresses, in the area the little geofence we put around an area. So in that, we can estimate our volume and business potential. So with that, In our systems, we use a lot of systems that we've adhered to, or at least purchased through we've been members of the IFA for a number of years. So there's a lot of great products out there, and a lot of support people. So they're able to see who their customers are, and if they can, again, we use the name Coca-Cola only because everybody recognizes it, I guess. Typically we can't guarantee that they call it the Coke agent or whatever is going to use it in their area. But if you have a reference from a very happy customer, the likelihood of you getting the business is a lot greater, I believe anyways. So they basically have a lead base day one. We also assist in the first couple of months because we have experienced salespeople in train the trainer, or even helping them get those first couple of sales to get them started. So there's no shortage of customers. Trust me. Like, and in Canada, the market potential in what we call distillates or diesel fuel is about 26 billion liters a year. In the USA, it's 300 billion liters a year. Wow. That's incredible. Our market segment, we say, if we take the type of customers that typically use us, our market potential in the state is 3 to 5 billion liters a year. Gallons.
Right.
Okay, so I have to crisscross back from metric to imperial. So the market potential is really large.
So right now, I mean, there's just a lot of territories, potential franchisees for the U.S. that are available to investors coming up. It sounds like.
Yes, no, we've spent probably the better part of a year and a half, 2 years doing all of our registrations. I think everybody in the U.S. knows the time that takes. So we're pretty right to go in, I think, virtually every state. So we've taken the process of, certainly we've had our UFOX and everything else. We have our U.S. lawyers out of Minnesota, and so we've been preparing for this process for probably the better part of 2 years.
I mean, it's interesting, just not the industry you're in, but somebody investing in your franchise, already having that built-in potential business from some of these established relationships with these corporations you have. I mean, that's just. If somebody goes to a territory that has so much potential from the relationships you formed, I would tend to think that they would be more inclined to maybe move forward with 4Refule. Do your franchise fees stay the same, or if one territory has a lot of potential business, it might cost more for that territory, Jack?
Yeah, what we do is we estimate and agree with our potential franchisee on the number of stores. Again, I keep coming back to stores because a truck is a mobile store. Right. So we agree on the market potential, and then we just have a formula that the franchise is a function of that. So it's X amount of $1,000 per potential store. And then as each store is opened, there is another fee. So it's not unlike a lot of franchise models you'd see in the food industry.
Right, that's why I asked that. It seems like there'd be a little fluctuation with the cost. So
yeah, and our formula is the same on international as well. So like if we've had some interest from Kuwait, from Mexico, from Malaysia, Scandinavia. We're talking to all these people at the States because understand we only started international franchising about 9 months ago.
Right.
So the interest is huge, but because this is a fairly significant business, this is a little different than a Subway on the corner. This is the person that we're looking for has probably already been successful in business. He might already be in the logistics and construction business as well, and this could be an add-on to, he sees the value for his own business. He might say, well, if it works for me, it's going to work for all the other guys in my territory, my state. So
you welcome that type of franchisee, that type of where it's an add-on to their income stream, adding 4Refule. I guess that's considered a pretty solid type franchisee.
Absolutely, and also you don't have to replicate all your finance admin costs as well. So I mean, if a person has an existing business and there's some synergies with this, well, then they reduce their operating costs, and of course their bottom line is better sooner.
Right.
Jack, what's a typical day like for 4Refule franchisees, or what will a typical day be like?
Well, because we're business to business, in a lot of cases we control the processes. So we don't wait for our customers to phone us for fuel. Our job is to keep them full. I mean, we did a couple of years ago. We had a fairly well-known university do a survey in Canada on us and our industry, and one of the key things people say, like, why would you use a service like this? And we were thinking, it could be the cost savings, it'd be this, that. The number one thing was the convenience and lack of hassle. So, in other words, I don't have to send my guys out. I know where they are. They're on site where they should be.
Right.
And it was the convenience of knowing that I'm not going to run out of fuel. So if you have a $200,000 tractor trailer, or more to the point, you have a $2 million D9 Cat, if that sucker goes down because he's out of fuel for a couple of hours, you've lost a huge amount of revenue. So our job is to make sure our customers are full. So what the day looks like, his route will be ever changing in the business because, of course, he's adding on new customers. So he'll have to reroute. We're in the process of putting in some routing technology as well. So his day is very predictable, but remember what I said earlier on, this is a 24/7 business. Now, some people, a person that's sort of frightened by that, probably shouldn't get involved. Having said that, nobody works 24/7 anyway, so you do get the staff. There's lots of people like to work graveyard shift, but you're working your assets as long as you can.
That's true. That's interesting.
What advice, Jack, would you give to an aspiring entrepreneur looking to buy a franchise? So many of our listeners could be potential franchise owners looking to expand, but a lot are first-time business or franchise owners. You've been in franchising a while. What advice would you give to someone looking to get into the franchising industry?
Well, I guess because of my experience over the years and I was, I'll be honest, when I got into franchising 14 years ago, I was naive, but just for a potential franchisee to understand what the relationship is, if he looks at a system and he says, yeah, this is really good, and they have a track record, and I heard your show earlier on, you have successful businesses, have successful franchises, and vice versa, right, is that he's got to understand, the person has to understand what the franchise relationship, that he rents or rents the right to use the business. In other words, I've had too many guys in the past say, I'm buying a franchise, and they're off doing their own thing because they think they have a smarter mousetrap. They can make a better McDonald's hamburger than Ronald can. Right. So getting people at the get-go to understand what the relationship is, because if you don't get that right to begin with, then you can be fighting battles from day two. Right. Maybe that's franchising 101, but I still see, I'm actually on the board of the Canadian Franchise Association, and we hear stories all the time where people think they're buying a business. They don't realize they're buying a license to run a business. It's a good point, so, and an answer that we get a lot to that question, and what Marty and I talk about on the show a lot. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You're buying a set and proven system, but you're right. Make sure you're adding people to your franchise system that understand that. Absolutely, and what you talked earlier about, again, listen to your show earlier. Now, we absolutely invite people to make the mousetrap smarter, but we have to do it within a system so all people in the system benefit, because when we all benefit, the person with the idea benefits as well. And of course, it builds the brand value, builds the value of their business as well. So we invite, like so many other good franchisors, invite changes. Hey, we don't have a corner on good ideas, so we're open to that. But we all know that have been in franchising long enough, you have to systemize and put in the system to the benefit of all. Right. Good point. What's about the average investment size for someone who wants to get involved with 4Refule, Jack? Well, we have typically our franchise in the U.S. will be 10 operating units. Most of our people will lease the units, so the capital cost of the truck is, and we say that a truck rental or lease is like renting your space for your Subway in your shopping center. So you actually don't own that space; you just have a perpetual lease. It's an operating cost. So right. That's number one, because if you're going out and buying 10 trucks, that'd be about $1.5 million. That's a chunk of change. Yeah. Okay, so the trucks are operating costs, but the 10 operating unit, if a person doesn't already have a startup admin, in other words, he's starting from afresh, his operating his cost probably is in the order of $600,000 to $800,000. Okay. So that's everything, franchise fee. Yes, and that's his staffing. That's his staffing for the first year. That's basically his losses, his operating losses. Okay. What are 4Refule plans for the future? I mean, you mentioned about the international interest in 4Refule. I imagine you'll go in that direction in the future. But what about short and long term, Jack? Well, we have a vision. I think you talked about the 1-800-GOT-JUNK chaps who are actually in Vancouver as well. I know Brian. Oh, okay. Our vision is we had a conference last September, and we called it 10 by 20. So what that means is our goal is to be managing 10 billion liters of fuel, which is, call it 3 billion gallons, by the year 2020. So that sounds like a bit of a reach, especially since it took us nearly 12 years to do our first billion liters. we're going to do our second billion liters in Canada in less than 2 years from last year. So with international franchising and everybody in the system, our vision is to be managing, we call it managing the world's fuel. And we do communicate that. We actually hired a person about 2 years ago who was a advertising executive with one of the major world advertising agencies to do what you're saying before, to communicate that message not only to our staff, which is critical, but also to our customers. Let our customers know what we're doing too, and how we can help. So we dedicate resources to communication, and there's a marketing advantage too. So yeah, we try and communicate our vision very strongly.
Is there a certain amount of franchisees you want to see in the U.S. over the next few years?
We don't have a number on that because I believe we do have a number of cases of interest as we speak.
Right.
Sort of like the 10-truck opportunity is probably the smaller one, but we're talking to some people that might want a state. So I mean, if you said like, if you find the right candidate and it's California is in terms of population is the size of Canada. Yet it's only a third of the size of the province of British Columbia, where I currently live. So yeah, there will be the right people who have the right skill set in that. So we will possibly sell a territory or a state or two or three states. So in our case, more is not better. We want to have the right selection of people rather than selection is really critical here.
Just a lot of opportunity right now with your franchise and at the right time. So it should be interesting for you next couple of years.
It's going to be a buzz.
Yeah.
Jack, we have about 60 seconds. What's the best way for our listeners to get more information on becoming a franchisee?
Yeah, well, our website is the 3Ws 4Refule. That's number 4Refuel.com, and there's a franchise section there. Okay, and actually, if they have the time, spend the time on the website. Not only the franchise section, but we've got a lot of testimonials, a lot of media coverage, and other people. I mean, what I'm saying, trust me, is true. But on the other hand, it sounds better if it comes from a third party, and then there's a lot of third-party endorsement, because if a person's looking at a franchise, I would, and I'm sure you say this all the time, make sure you do your homework.
Sure.
Make a business decision, not an emotional decision. Because franchising is meant to be a long-term relationship. That's what we want. We're not in the business of selling franchise. We're in business of establishing long-term relationships. So, hey, there's a lot of work to do for the potential franchisee, and there's a lot of information out there.
That's great advice, Jack. Great job.
I want to thank you again, Jack. And again, we'll have to have you and probably maybe even Don. We could bring back some of Jack's franchisees on a future show. That would be fantastic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we'd love to have that. Yeah.
So wonderful.
Again,
hey, well,
Jack.
Thank you for the opportunity, gentlemen.
It's been our pleasure, Jack. Thanks.
Have a nice summer, Jack. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Great concept, huh, Don?
Yeah.
Another great show. I mean, it's just I could have talked to him a little longer, actually, but it's over the time frame.
Yeah, I really didn't know about anything with this particular industry or even transportation in general, and so it was a lot of, I see a lot of the services that they provide. So.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting talking about the show next week. There's just so much to talk about. He just made so many great points. Listen to this. It says, after labor, fuel typically represents the largest operating cost for most transportation and construction companies. It's just so many things to talk about. But
it's interesting how he said that they sell time because they're, time is money, and operators don't want to have to be spending time, fueling up their trucks. Have someone else do it. And what was he saying too? $8 billion in fuel theft last year.
That's incredible, isn't it? That
yeah.
number. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, you hear a number like that, you say, my God, it's.
Yeah.
I think I could have a lot of fun selling this thing if I, you hear these concepts, you say, God, why didn't I think of that, or why didn't I get into it, and it's just, it's a very interesting concept, so I definitely love to have Jack back on a future show.
Definitely.
So you did a great job today, Don, and for our listeners, we want to wish you all a happy July 4th weekend. And
right.
Next week we have, I guess the timing is appropriate, right? Baskin-Robbins.
Right, we'll go to fuel to ice cream. And,
there you go. Just shows the diversity of the show, but it is National Ice Cream Month, so for our listeners,
right.
Enjoy some ice cream over the weekend, and go to franchiseinterviews.com, go to gofranchise.com, go to franchisefunding.net, and I guess I'll be talking to you next week, won't I, Don?
Definitely. Have a great holiday weekend, Marty.
You too, Don. Talk to you next week. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.